Welcome to my top 15 survival games with player versus player interaction. Not everyone's cup of tea. A lot of you Care Bears just love to build on your own, play with friends and not worry about toxic players ruining the experience. For others, it's part of their lifeblood. They love the fun, they love that interaction that you can have with random players. And of course the king daddy of the survival PvP scene is Rust. So anything new, anything that's going to be trying to get into this space has to offer something pretty unique or revolutionary. And for them Care Bear players, don't necessarily turn off the video straight away. You may find some of these games have got just that right balance of an open world to survive, build bases and explore, but also have elements that are very controlled, very different from what you might be used to seeing games like Rust and DayZ. Of course, the survival genre is littered with failed attempts to capture that audience that Rust and perhaps DayZ have managed to do. Most notably recently, Dead Matter already just launched out of the blue with 9% positive reviews only. So it does show the pitfalls of getting this right and how badly you can get it wrong. But I'm really optimistic about this next 15 games, from medieval warfare to futuristic takes, as well as some really oddball stuff going on with tropical paradises and zombies. These are the 15 upcoming survival games with PvP you need to know about. My name's JADE PG, I'm the home of survival games news and guides, and your ratbags, let's go. Kicking off with something slightly under the radar, this is Kingdoms of Ereloth. It's promising to be a medieval pirate survival RPG that will have you tasked with roaming the land, taking on fancy creatures as you build up your own settlements. There's going to be diplomacy in the game, you've got a chance to become leaders of regions and areas, and it's definitely more in the lines of a proper MMO in that regard. Although it looks to have a strong focus on RPG and MMO, expect all the other survival trappings, lots of crafting, lots of survival and farming. Couldn't find too much in terms of how it will actually work, if there's going to be PvE zones or some way that you can just opt into the PvP, but it looks like there is a chance to become sort of the overlord or king of different regions, and you can well imagine that you might have to be called to arms to defend your lands against other tribes. There's going to be mounts in the game to take you to all the different biomes, huge emphasis on the combat system with lots of various styles, lots of roles that you can choose and craft and make it to your own, and of course the habitual base building. Looks like you'll also be able to have your own tribe of NPCs that you'll be able to control and take with you into combat if you haven't got any friends. This has not been on my radar at all, and I'm a bit concerned that it's not on anyone else's. Fingers crossed it is an actually good game, just doesn't have the marketing budget, and we'll get to see for ourselves whether or not they can manage to have all of these different ideas actually working as a full game. Next up, Fractured Veil, which is releasing on October the 18th on Steam. This MMO style survival game has you exploring a tropical paradise, fighting off mutants as well as other players. They're keen to point out that they are establishing PvE zones, so not everywhere will be a complete bloodbath. You'll be doing the usual looting, gathering, building and hopefully crafting enough weapons and armors to keep you surviving longer. It's got a procedural building, road and river system, proper day and night cycles and RPG inspired player progression with talents, abilities and skills. The game makers are promising countless dungeons that you'll be able to explore and conquer with your friends, or hopefully try and avoid others. The game's been in long development time with a successful small Kickstarter, and now it's finally releasing. So that's the marketing spiel. What do I actually think of it? Yes, maybe the graphics are a little bit dated nowadays, and the idea of marrying a post-apocalyptic world in a tropical paradise isn't what we're used to, but I think that's actually its strength. I'm so sick and tired of seeing just some wasteland filled with burned out cars and pretty dull grey skies. In the past I've coined it Dead Island with PvP multiplayer. With them recently moving to Unreal Engine 5, I'm pretty sure that the graphics are going to carry on improving, and hopefully they can keep up development with enough updates to keep the player base going. So very intrigued how they're going to manage the PvE zones and make it more interesting and exciting for the more bloodthirsty players. Definitely keeping this on my radar and hopefully giving you a breakdown when it releases. On to something I know very well and probably my first taste of true survival, Ark Survival Evolved with the Ark Ascended remaster, supposedly coming out at some point in October, most likely towards the end of the month. Is it going to live up to expectations? Well, we haven't seen a single shred of gameplay up to this point. This is seemingly the last throw of the dice by the Wildcard dev team and their publisher Snail Games, as they seemingly are running out of money. It was originally planned as a free upgrade utilising the Unreal Engine 5's new capabilities, but that's been changed into a paid product. Is it going to do enough numbers to keep the production of Ark 2 along the pipeline? We can only hope so. Ark gave me my big break in terms of YouTube. It was the game that I started out really well with and covered for a good couple of years with thousands of videos. I'm intrigued, despite all the controversy that surrounds this game and their developers, to see if they can actually pull it off. I'm very excited about consoles finally getting the ability to have some sort of mod support. Can the masters of overhype pull it off one more time? Ark Ascended is the only way that you'll be able to play official servers in the future, as they're just about to cut off support for the Ark Survival Evolved servers. But quite worryingly, with the remaster only having one island to explore until they start adding the DLC and maps that they added over the years at different intervals over the next year and a half. Will it be enough to keep survival fans happy? I can only hope. So, yes, I have to include The Day Before, or otherwise now known as maybe Dayworld. Another game that's been mired in controversy. Fingers crossed it could deliver on the promise of Division versus DayZ and hopefully be arriving on November the 10th. Of course, they've been involved in their own legal battles, having to change the name of the game, and it's been off Steam a good amount of time now, so it should be getting some news about whether or not it's actually going to make it. With so many delays, so many weird marketing and promo choices that these guys have made, I highly doubt it. I want to believe that the idea of having a fully fledged MMO that has that DayZ kind of survival gameplay mixed in with PvE zones that you'll be able to go and trade, barter with, and have your own homes that will be unraidable sounds pretty good. Pure controlled conflict as you explore some of these dark zones, fighting against other players, and of course the habitual zombies. It's become an absolute meme and running joke that The Day Before will ever actually be a successful launched game, but if they can pull it off, if they can make this compelling experience blending the two genres together of looter shooter and survival, then I'll definitely be down for this. Possibly returning to Steam, who absolutely knows, but eventually maybe console too. Another game that's re-emerged onto my radar is Pioneer. This actually got announced a good few years ago and then it went all a little bit too quiet and dark. It's a first-person MMO in the style of Escape from Tarkov and maybe obviously a little bit of Stalker. Running around a post-apocalyptic world, fighting all sorts of anomalies, doing quests for NPCs and taking advantage of some of these areas to hopefully be safe from all the weird shenanigans and of course other players. Quite unusual not to have a Steam page. They haven't even announced that they're coming to Epic Games Store, so it's still up in the air about exactly what PC platform they will be launching on, but they have said they will be launching on next-gen consoles at the same time. Take all this with a pinch of salt, but supposedly they're working with some partners with the porting rights and the publication rights to hopefully help them get the game out to the rest of the world, as they are a Russian/Belarusian style company. And of course, with the invasion of Ukraine still well ongoing and hopefully the fight back, it may be some time. But they are still saying 2023 at the moment in the most recent interview only done a few weeks ago. They're apparently just waiting to see how the ports have gone and then they'll be announcing platforms and more release info. They're also even planning to release it somehow on older gen consoles in the future too, Xbox One and a PlayStation 4. So take all that information with a heavy dose of salt. We'll have to see if Pioneer can actually live up to the Stalker vibes that it's promising. Ever wished you could battle other players with your Pokemon? Well then, Skyclimbers might be the game for you. It had an alpha that came out last year and let's just say it was very alpha. Since then, I wouldn't say it's had a huge amount of updates either. It was a massive Kickstarter funded game, raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, and supposedly is going to promise that mixture of an open world survival base building game with these sentient creatures that you'll be able to hopefully tame and basically put into Pokeballs ready to use later on. As you might imagine, getting the basics nailed down for this game seems to be the priority, but they do have some sort of plans for some sort of PvP game modes in the future. What that actually entails, no one's too clued up just yet. So yeah, one to watch with maybe a release date coming at the end of this year or obviously more than likely next. Rust in medieval setting, maybe Renown could be the one to crack that. And it's been promised many times before, but it does seem to have made great progress. I did an interview with these guys a good while ago, and I was skeptical of a small team with little experience being able to pull something so ambitious off. But they've been hard at work with regular updates to their backers and getting things ready behind the scenes, with lots of playtests as well to show the progress, and actually I'm quite impressed. Renown is offering exactly what I said, a medieval survival experience, base building, gathering resources to build huge castles, forts and keeps, to band up with other players and fight other clans and tribes. Siege warfare, weapons and of course hand-to-hand combat a la chivalry, and you get the idea. They've got another playtest very soon which will be open to the public on Steam in their next Steam Next Fest. Definitely one to watch, and I'll be eager to see if they've got a release date at some point in 2024. With the success of Conan Exiles, Funcom have opted to make a go of it with Dune Awakening. This is going to be an MMO sandbox survival experience with full-on PvP enabled. They never quite nailed it correctly with Conan Exiles. It was quite buggy and just problematic with the way they introduced the gods smiting everything below. In this instance though, it's all about utilising the technology and more advanced vehicular combat, which they've got help from separate development teams with a good history behind them too. So that mixture of hand-to-hand combat, shooting other players and getting inside your vehicles to go and get the spice, seems like it could be a winner. Another one that's supposedly coming to consoles hopefully at the same time as PC as well. There's not much concrete info on an actual release date. They've been teasing stuff, and I think initially they did say 2023, but it looks to be moved on now until at some point next year. Hopefully we'll get a chance to take on the big massive worm then. With the backing they've had and obviously all the money they made off Conan Exiles, I'm expecting this to be a much more polished game than that previous game was, and it's pretty unique with that blend of vehicular combat with some of the other regular tropes you're used to, so fingers crossed they can pull it off. We've been here before, a post-apocalyptic open world survival experience fighting against zombies or some sort of mutants. No, I'm not talking about Dead Matter or the day before, this is in fact called Rooted. Another one of them games that made a huge ton of money via Kickstarter, seemingly coming out of nowhere with a small team of developers promising base building and of course the ability to go and explore a huge open world, mixing up though countryside and cityscapes. They have said they're going to be focused on the PvE experience at first, but they have said absolutely if they get enough calls for it, they'll try and implement some sort of PvP mode in the future. I do kind of roll my eyes at some of these games nowadays, like how many more zombie apocalypse simulators are devs going to try and make? But then you look at the games that have come out and they're not always been that amazing. Scum is now picking up some plaudits as it appears closer to its 1.0 release, but for a long time that felt like that wasn't really going anywhere either. So hopefully this can break the mould and be another success in the mould of Rust or DayZ rather than Dead Matter. I do like the idea of the cityscapes exploration, clearing out dungeons, fighting against creatures, and then obviously maybe heading back to the wilderness to hopefully go into our cozy cabin. We'll have to see how that PvP is implemented there. But extremely early days, I wouldn't imagine this game coming out in any way, shape or form until at least the end of 2024, possibly 2025. Last Oasis shone brightly all for about 2 days and then it crashed and burned and seemingly is about to go offline as it's been handed to modders after a huge amount of radio silence by its developers Donkey Crew. So perhaps just in time is Sand, a Ukrainian made game where it will focus on survival aspects in a kind of steampunk post-punk apocalyptic world. You'll be going out salvaging, gathering resources and bringing it back to your towns and hopefully building up vibrant settlements with other players. Obviously the comparisons with Last Oasis exist because of the mechanical walkers that you'll be using as your vehicles and perhaps your bases. Much in the same way as Last Oasis, your walkers are vital to your survival, making sure you've got fortifications, defences and capabilities to take on other number of creatures that have maybe sprung up since the apocalypse. We haven't seen or heard too much other than a few dev blogs detailing some of the character and art and of course this CGI trailer. Maybe a more favourable comparison for some could be Hunt Showdown but set in a sandy, bright lit atmosphere instead of the dark swamps. Either way, I think out of all of the games I'm talking about today, This one, despite its limited amount of info, is the one I'm most hyped for. Much how I got excited for Last Oasis' potential, I think if Sand can nail that mix of base building with your vehicle, but also having some other aspects for you to do rather than just gank other players, it could be a massive winner in the future. Coming to Steam at first, but no plans for console just yet. It's published by Tiny Build, but that's a good sign, as they are often porting their games over to other platforms. If you want something a bit more primitive, then maybe Skye the Misty will be for you. This is an ambitious survival game set in the Viking world on the Isle of Skye in Scotland. You will be the pioner as you brave elements, confront fearsome predators, unravelling the fate of the land and the mystery of his arrival. Sharpen your axe and prepare to set sail. Valhalla awaits. So that's the Steam spiel. What does it offer? Well, this was one of the first developers I saw actually utilising Unreal Engine 5. And the ambition is to have photorealistic graphic style with the world, married together with the traditional elements of an open world survival game. I got back into Assassin's Creed with Valhalla in a big way a couple years ago, and I'm intrigued to see if a proper Viking survival experience can actually make a success of it after a number of games haven't really hit the mark, obviously other than Valheim. But with this one being based a little bit more on history and actual real world, this could potentially be the juxtaposition we need for that survival experience with a bit more reality. The closed alpha actually has players exploring a small part of Norway before eventually making our way to Skye for the full game, which I'm hoping will come out at some point towards the end of 2024, perhaps 2025. As promised, we'll be back with Ark 2, supposedly again now been delayed until the end of 2024. Who knows when this will actually come out. Again, utilising the Unreal Engine 5, the devs are promising a much more primitive style feel for the sequel to one of the biggest survival games going. The feeling is that it will be much more story focused, although there has been elements of open world and the traditional PvP being confirmed for its next big game, but I'm a little concerned it is just a kind of God of War story led rip-off rather than the open sandbox worlds we're used to exploring. And of course with the remaster coming out pretty much so soon before this one's release, yeah, I am skeptical whether or not we'll actually see this come out when it says it's gonna. We've seen more also of Ark 2 than we have the remaster, which is really weird. So moving on to something that blurs the boundaries between just a regular survival and full-on MMO is PAX Die. Now this is a CGI trailer. I've looked into it quite a bit and it does look like they are promising in-game base building, lots of crafting as you would expect in typical MMO or survival game, but set in a medieval style fantasy world, although I get serious vibes of like King Arthur and Camelot from this trailer. That line, that boundary between just a regular MMO and survival is kind of blurred quite a lot by a lot of games. I feel this crosses over quite nicely with the base building component that you can have, setting up your own settlements and buildings and hopefully encouraging your friends or random players to build big huge cities with you. There's quite a few dev vlogs that have gone up on their website, although the last one was back in June, and some of these are how we got our big info on the building aspects of the game. As like most MMOs, you'll be able to specialise in contributing in many ways, becoming a master armourer, perhaps possibly a big farmer, or maybe going out for a higher mercenary. All this as you explore a huge world fighting against all sorts of creatures and of course other players in other clans. I have got a Steam page up and that's where I expect it to release first, and hopefully we'll get more details about when that'll actually happen towards the end of the year. So this next one, I'm probably going to get a bit of blowback. It's more of a hope than real concrete info. But State of Decay 3 is meant to be promising the potential of what they've always really wanted to do, make a zombie survival apocalypse MMO. Undead Labs simply didn't have the funding or the full experience to make that happen with their first game or their second game. But with Microsoft buying them out, seemingly giving them enough cash injection to go ahead and build the game that they've always wanted State of Decay to be. And that still seems to be the case with one of their big executives leaving the company and stating that Undead Labs are truly gonna deliver on that original vision. Now I would expect with any MMO, especially large scale, that PvP will be a part of that. And the idea of just running around a huge world, coming across players that might help me take out some zombified deer sounds okay, but it certainly would be a bit more interesting if it had some sort of DayZ mechanics where you could potentially fight other players and loot them, or have some sort of dark zones like the Division. But quite frankly, a lot of everything I'm saying is just hearsay. We still just don't have enough info. Despite its trailer release back in 2018, the game has revealed little to nothing since then, other than they have now hired a separate brand new dev team to work on State of Decay 2, delivering content updates for that continuously, while the bulk of the team now moves on to State of Decay 3. I still wouldn't expect this game to release until at least late 2025. And a somewhat late addition, this is Hunter's Uprising, a brand new PvP PvE survival extraction game. Yes, a bit like Escape from Tarkov, but they've got some mythical creatures roaming around the landscape as you try and get some sort of loot, take on other players, and make it back home before a Wendigo rips you open. I'm intrigued by this. They've actually got the help of a YouTuber well known in the DayZ survival sphere, Septic Falcon, actually helping them with gameplay, 3D art and basically media stuff, and so yeah, this could hopefully deliver on that. It's a unique premise and something very different from the rest of the survival games we've seen. I'm totally down for a survival experience where I have to take on players, but some sort of mythical beings as well. They've got a slew of dev blogs up and running on their different media platforms, and certainly will be looking forward to checking this one out in the future when we get some sort of info about a release date. And that's pretty much it. They're the survival games with PvP that are on my radar. If there's any more that I should have, absolutely let me know what they are and I'll include them in a future video perhaps. For many, PvP is dying, with only the big behemoths like Rust and DayZ really truly began to provide that experience, with so many buggy, broken, unfinished potential releases having gone by the side. But I'm always hopeful that one day some of these games will make it and they will offer some true competition and give us some new experiences, not just in taking other players out, but actually having open worlds that are worth exploring too. If you want to know more about all the other open world survival games that are going to be releasing soon, then look out for future videos where I'll be more dedicated on either big sandbox experiences for PvE players, more indie led titles, and of course anything else going on in the survival world. Until next time, ratbags, I will catch you later.